Hey guys, KJ with Living Christian. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Bible Reading and Coffee Drinking Podcast. So we're in episode 11 now. We've done a couple of bonus episodes along the way, but this is the 11th episode of reading the Bible, answering some questions, and drinking some coffee is what I like to do. So this is the 11th episode. We're going to continue to do this for a few episodes more in season 1, and I'll probably revamp and add some new things to season 2. I'll continue to read the Bible and talk about it and talk to you guys, answer questions. I'm trying to mix a few other things in here, some other bonus episodes, such as interviews, etc. So look forward to that. That'll be coming out this summer. But we're going to continue to do a few more episodes of this version and read the Bible, drink my coffee, and talk about it. That's what we're going to do. So I got my coffee handy. Hopefully you guys have got yours too. Excuse me, that's what we do on this podcast. So hopefully you guys are getting a little bit out of it. So today we're in Ecclesiastes 3, which is an interesting book. It's talking about embracing change and injustices. And I think it's a great one to read, and we're going to read along here in a minute. If you'd like to follow along, get your Bible, and I'm in the New Living Translation version, but grab whatever version you want. If you're driving or jogging or out and about, feel free to listen, and I'll read it to you, which is fun. So in the meantime, check us out at livingchristian.org. If you haven't already, there we have Bible verse list, blogs. We have all the archives and the links to all these videos and podcasts right there on the website, livingchristian.org. And while you're there, check out our store. We've got t-shirts and hoodies and hats and all sorts of stuff, including Jesus is King t-shirt that I have on right now. So check it out. We're going to be doing some new apparel beginning of the summer, so check those things out. But in the meantime, use the code podcast20 that gets you 20% off of everything in the store. Podcast20, it's unique to you, our podcast listeners. It'll always be in effect, 20% off the entire store, livingchristian.org/store, or just go to livingchristian.org. There you can see all the good stuff that we have going on that website, including all the old podcasts. If you want to go take a look and listen to all those things, or check us out on YouTube. You can watch these podcasts or other videos that we do. But all that is located on livingchristian.org. All right, cool. So we're going to get into Ecclesiastes 3 today. I want to answer some of your questions. I've got them pulled up here in front of me. I've got some good ones today. You guys have submitted a lot of questions, like over 100 and something questions that you guys want me to answer. So I try to get to 2 or 3 every podcast, but it's going to take me a while to dig through all these. So I've picked out 3 that I really love. That I think I know the answer to, but we'll see here shortly. So anyways, without further ado, hopefully you guys have your coffee ready. I'm drinking Taste of Austin. I'm outside of Austin, Texas, so it seemed fitting. It's H-E-B coffee. It's delicious. It's just not a paid program. I just like to drink it. It's good stuff. I am thinking positive today and having some coffee. All right, so let's dive into Ecclesiastes 3. It's titled A Time for Everything in my Bible. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time for peace. All right, that's a lot of different times. The general consensus is King Solomon wrote this, and obviously we believe here at Living Christian that the scriptures all breathed by God. So God is telling us here, Solomon's telling us in lieu of God, that there is a time for everything in your life. So if you're crying right now, there will be a time later to laugh. If there's a time to search, there's also a time to quit searching. If there's a time to love, hate, etc. So there's always a time, these seasons of life that continue to move circular and circular and circular all the way through our entire lifespan. There's always a time. If you think about it, seasonal terms, there's a time for winter and there's a time for spring. There's a time for summer. There's a time for fall. All these seasons, whether it's nature or whether it's our lives, continue to move throughout these circles. And I firmly believe that if you're in a season of crying right now, there will be a season of laughter. If you're in a season of winter, there will be a season of spring. You've got to have patience. You got to trust the Lord and trust God with everything that he's going to have to you. It's the same kind of general thought about the circular nature of the Bible. There was a time for us to have the old laws. There's a time for the new covenant. There's a time of the flood and a time of Noah. There's always these movements and circumstances in the Bible that take care of one another. God has a plan to move you through these seasons of life, move you through these times of life. And there will be times when you need to search, and there will be a time for you to stop searching. So it's interesting how he lays it all out like that. It really gives you perspective of how their thought process was there of having patience with the Lord and realizing that everything happens for a reason, waiting for the next thing to happen. And we can certainly take life lessons from that. So let's get into verse 9. What do people really get for all their hard work? I've seen the burden God has placed on all of us, yet God has made everything beautiful in its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. I love that. What do people really get for all their hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on all of us, that God has made it beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning. And what he's saying is, we can't see the forest for the trees. We can't see past what is right in front of us. We can't see the entire eternity from beginning to end. Only God can. All we can kind of deal with is the season or the time that we're in. So verse 12. So I concluded there is nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. So enjoy the day. Enjoy the place that God has you in right now, Solomon's saying. Enjoying that, what you're eating, what you're drinking, enjoying the fruits of your labor. So enjoy the life that God has provided for you right now, because they are gifts from him. So don't worry too much about the future or the next time. Enjoy the time and focus on the time that is right in front of you. Verse 14, and I know that whatever God does is final. Nothing can be added to it or taken from it. God's purpose is that people should fear him. What is happening now has happened before, and it will happen in the future, has happened before. But because God makes the same things happen over and over again, it goes into the conversation I talked about a few minutes ago about life being circular, these seasons of life that we have. I'm a big believer whether that history repeats itself, so to speak. I know that's an old term, and I know it's cliche, but in reality it is the truth. If you look at your own life, we go through these seasons of life, up and down and up and down and up and down. We go through storms, but yet God provides the sunlight afterwards. We always come out of something. But on the flip side is, when you're enjoying good and peaceful times, you never know what's going to be in front of you. Up and down in circular motions, the seasons of life, as they call it. Winter, spring, summer, fall. It just kind of keeps moving. So enjoy your summer, but know that there's a winter coming. And when you're fighting through winter, know that there's a summer coming. God will make that to be true. I'm also a big proponent of reading through the Bible and realizing that it is repeating itself over and over again, just like Solomon says here, because God makes the same things happen over and over again. He continues to save us. Especially in the Old Testament, it is continue all these stories and tales are prophesying Jesus coming to save us, right? Every single time when things get rough, God provides a miracle. It's flooding the earth. God provided Noah with the ark. The whale swallows Jonah. He gets saved and unharmed afterwards. All these stories over and over again. David, all these stories you read in the Old Testament are prophesying that Jesus is coming. That no matter what you're going through and how difficult life can be, no matter if you're in the lion's den or not, if you trust God wholeheartedly, he will save you. Or just like Daniel, right? There's so many stories in the Old Testament that aren't about us. They're about God. What they're about is the fact that there's going to be trials and tribulations, but somebody is coming at that point. They're prophesying that Jesus is coming to save us. So think about that in your life as Solomon's talking about this. Not just the seasons of your own life, but the seasons of history and how they repeat each other and knowing that the end is coming, but it's a glorious end with Jesus Christ. All right, the injustices of life. Take a sip real quick, and then we'll get into verse 16. All right, I also noticed that under the sun there is evil in the courtroom. Yes, even the courts of law are corrupt. I said to myself, in due season, God will judge everyone, both good and bad, for all of their deeds. Verse 18, I also thought about the human condition, how God proves to people that they are like animals. For people and animals share the same fate, both breathe and both must die. Some people have no real advantages over the animals. How meaningless. Both go to the same place. They came from dust and they return to dust. For who can we prove that the human spirit goes up and the spirit of animals goes down into the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better for people than to be happy in their work. That is our lot in life, and no one can bring us back to see what happens after we die. All right, so this is pretty deep with Solomon's talking about the injustices of life and how life isn't fair. And in reality, if you look at just this life and this earth, many people are just like animals in the sense of they don't have real purpose. They live, they die, they return to the dirt, and that's it. But we, as God's people, right? If we're judged good and bad, if we're judged good, which we're not good, but we are because of the grace of God and because of Jesus Christ, we will be there. And he talks about the human spirit going up. That is what we need to focus on. And so he says in verse 22, so I saw there is nothing better for people than to be happy in their work. That is our lot in life, and no one can bring us back to see what happens after we die. It's very kind of a dire look at eternity in that sense, in the sense of, okay, be happy right now. There's a time for everything. There's a season for everything. But know that unless you're with God, unless you're faithful, unless you're fearful of God, as he talks about earlier in the chapter, you're going to be just like the animals and just return to dirt. And that's all you got, right? And that's all there is. You share the same fate. Both breathe and both must die, right? But if you go back up into verse 14, he talks about God's purpose is that people should fear him. All right. So if you fear the Lord, if you trust the Lord because of that fear, know that your fate will be different than the animals. Your fate will be different when you are judged in that courtroom. Okay. Because even the courts of law are corrupt on earth, but they're not in heaven. He said in due season, God will judge everyone, not in the courtroom, but in heaven. And that is going to determine your fate. So that is a kind of a deep ending to Ecclesiastes 3. But the moral of the story, or the wrap-up of Ecclesiastes 3 is there's going to be a time for everything in earth, on earth, a time in your life, a season in your life. Bear with it. You'll get through it. Work hard. Fear God. And by the end of it, when you're judged for your works, you will be differentiated from everybody else that just lived for the world. So have patience in God, trust God, fear God, because he is in control. We are not. And if you have that fear of the Lord and you have that trust of the Lord and you put your life in his hands, things will turn out differently than they would if you were just an animal or just somebody who doesn't do it. So interesting chapter there in Ecclesiastes 3. Hope you guys enjoy it. There is a time for everything, and I would encourage everybody today to think about where they're at in their life. Try to take note of what they're doing with their life. What's your purpose? Are you loving your neighbor? Are you loving God? Are you living for God? Are you fearing God? Are you living with a sense of urgency, in the sense of what you don't want to do is just wait? You want to trust God and have patience through the seasons of life, but you don't want to just give up and go, you know what? I'm always going to be stuck in winter. I'm always going to be stuck in this storm of life. I'm never going to get out of it. I've got nothing more than this. I don't care anymore. That is certainly not the way we need to go about our life and live our life, because that's not fulfilling for us here, and it's not preparing us for heaven. Part of what we're doing here on this earth is preparing ourselves for heaven. And if you love God and fear God and trust God and do what Jesus says specifically in the New Testament, he lays out Matthew's 2 commandments, his most important commandments, right? Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's what Jesus wants us to do. through these seasons, right? He wants you to love everyone else. He wants you to primarily love God, regardless of the seasons and the life that Solomon's talking about. Whether there's a time for this and a time for that, as you go through this life, you got to follow those two most important commandments that Jesus laid out. And once you do, you will be fulfilled in this life and prepared for the next one. All right, cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed Ecclesiastes 3. It's a little bit different of a book today than we normally do, but I wanted to read a little Old Testament today. Sometimes I get the urge to read a little Old Testament. All right, so this is the time of the podcast where we read some of the questions that you guys have submitted. So if you want to submit a question for a future podcast, you can go to livingchristian.org, and it's right there. Go to the podcast page, scroll all the way down. You can submit there. You can also go, if you're on one of my social media pages, the link that's in the social media channels, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you're listening to, or wherever you're following me along, there is a link there to submit a question for the podcast. So that is how you do it. I'll drop it on here on my spreadsheet, and hopefully I'll get to it at some point. So the first one comes from Divya from Instagram. How do you find God's will in finding a right life partner? Okay, I assume you're talking about a spouse, or a significant other there, Divya. I would say the best way to approach trying to, find a spouse, we'll call it, two things. One is you got to trust the Lord is going to put the right people in your life at the right time, period. God chose my wife for me. I did not choose her. So that is first and foremost. You've got to trust God. If He wants you to be in a long-term relationship or a spouse with somebody that's going to make your life better and bring you closer to Jesus, then He will do that. Number two, so another way to look at it in terms of try to find somebody who loves Jesus more than they love you. I would say if you have Jesus in the middle of your relationship, that marriage is really three people. It's you, your spouse, and Jesus in the middle of it. So you always want to find somebody who probably loves Jesus more than they love you. So if they can serve Jesus and they can follow Jesus and they have that love of Christ in their heart, then they're going to help you be closer to Jesus. And that's the ultimate goal. Whether it's spouses or friendships, you want to surround yourself. You want to yoke yourself with people that bring you closer to Jesus. And in return, you need to try to bring other people closer to Jesus as well. So that's all part of it. So that is my answer on how to find God's will. You have to let it be God's will. You can't force it. Anytime you're working towards something that is God's will and God's plan, there's a much more high chance it's going to work out than if it's your plan and not God's. So follow God's plan for your life, follow His will, and find somebody that He puts in your life that brings you closer to Christ. All right, cool. That's a great question, Divya. The next one is from Priya, and that's from Instagram as well. So this has two questions. Let's just read both of them and see. Three questions, actually. All right, so let's read all through. Let's kind of read through them. They're kind of long, but I think there's a gist to this question. How to make sure the call of God over our lives to serve Him full time. I hear people say that ministry is it will be fruitless if we're not called by God. How do you know the call of God or gift He has over us? How do you know God's will and purpose over our lives in ministry, career, and marriage? That's a lot of questions, but here's the way I'm going to answer that, Priya. One is if you're called to minister. And the second part is if how do you know your purpose over your career and marriage? So if you are called to minister, if you're called to be in service of Christ full time as a pastor or something else along those lines, and you're working for the church and in the church, whether that is in the mission field or actually in a physical church, it can be challenging. But I will say that you'll know when you know. What I mean by that is if God puts that opportunity in your path, then He'll make that happen. And you'll want to do that full-time, 100%, and serving God completely versus being a part of this world anymore. And that's not for everybody. It's a challenge. It's a select few. It's not everybody can't do that. But God puts it in somebody's heart. So if you're not entirely sure with that, then maybe God doesn't want you to do that. Maybe He wants to do it in your career or your marriage, as you're talking about. And the second question, you can serve God in lots of ways and not just have to be a pastor. Okay, maybe you have a social media platform. Maybe you have a podcast like what I have. Maybe you just go about your career, and in your job, you're helping people get closer to Christ. Or in your marriage, you help bringing people closer to Christ. Or as a parent, your job is to help your kids be closer to Christ. There's lots of ways to do that, and it's not only about being a full-time pastor. Okay, now, if you're called, and they're different, the Bible talks about how there's different expectations for those that are called for that. But if you're not 100% sure, that doesn't mean that you can't serve God in a lot of different ways. So the way I look at it, my main purpose in life, and I think almost all of our main purposes of life, are kind of what I went back to talked about earlier in the podcast about Matthew. 2 commandments that Jesus gives us: love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. 2, love your neighbor as you love yourself. I think part of our purpose, or maybe our sole purpose in this life, is to love God and to love each other, period. And with that love, right, it means if you love Jesus so much, you want to tell other people about him, okay? And if you love somebody else, you're going to want to help them know Jesus. I mean, how selfish is it that we have the keys to eternity, the keys to salvation? We know, we've read the book, I've read the Bible, we're talking about it right now. Jesus died on the cross and was resurrected for my sins and to save me from my sins and to provide a path to the Father, as he talked about, to heaven. I know this. Now, how selfish is it of me to not share that with somebody who doesn't know it? Right? So no matter where you are today, in your career, school, marriage, maybe you're a full-time pastor, great. But whatever you do, you have to come at it with that perspective. You're sharing the love of Jesus with other people. And maybe it's in small ways, maybe it's in big ways. But that's what God is calling you to do. So think about what your spiritual gifts are. Think about what your life is like right now and try to figure out how to go about that in your day-to-day life. And if one day God leads you through that and leads you in order to be a pastor of a church, then so be it. Full-time ministry is great. But if he doesn't, and he wants to put you in a position to where you can preach the gospel to people who aren't in church, then that's his path for you as well. Because you need to love each other and, love your neighbor, love yourself, love God as first and foremost. So that is how I'm going to answer that long answer for such a short question. Priya, sorry about that. All right, one more sip of coffee, then we'll read one more from Sandra. All right, this is kind of a long one as well. I apologize. I picked long questions this time, but I think it's a good one. I'm still figuring out faith. I'm really even sure how to articulate the question, but here it is. I'm struggling with the concept of free will and how God can be omniscient and already know my fate. What is the point of life if God already knows whether I will receive salvation? My head hurts when I try to understand this. I keep reminding myself that I don't need to have it all figured out. But the human in me needs to understand in order to truly and authentically believe. I asked this question at small groups in the past and always feel like I'm being judged because I think people don't think I have faith. I just want someone to explain it to me. Here's my answer to that, I guess. That's a tough one, right? I think it depends on the denomination that you're a part of. There's some denominations of Christianity that feel that everything is preordained. Like God has it all laid out in front of you, and he chooses before we are born whether we're saved or not. I'm not sure that's the case, okay? At least not in my mind. I think we have free will, as you've talked about. I'm struggling with the concept of free will and how God can be omniscient and already know my fate. Okay, so there's a difference between him knowing your fate and him preordaining your fate. Well, look at it that way, okay? So I look at it in this sense. We do have free will. We do make decisions. It doesn't mean that God doesn't already know what the decision we're going to make. Maybe he does. I firmly believe that he knows the outcome. If you look at it in the sense of, let's correlate it to something in the real world that we can deal with. Let's say a football game. All right, so a football game, let's say that we have somehow came back from the future, and we know that the Denver Broncos have beat the Oakland Raiders. As a Broncos fan, I hope that happens every time. Las Vegas Raiders, I guess now. The Broncos beat the Raiders in any particular game, 35-21. Okay, we know the score at the end. We know the Broncos win, right? But along the way, there are plays that have to be run. The coach has to call a certain play in order to get to that position. So, and maybe God knows the score at the end of the game, but it's up to us to call the right plays in order to get to that score. So maybe one time we run right instead of running left, and we get tackled for a 2-yard loss. And then we roll out to the left and throw a pass and gain 7 yards. It's a football analogy. Sorry for those who don't know American football. But so regardless along the way, God knows that he's looking at it because he's outside of time, space, and matter. So he can see things that we can't see in terms of past and future. He looks at it differently than we do. So he knows the end of the game. He knows it's 35-21, but he's going to let us play the game. Right? And how that's going to turn out is going to be, maybe somebody gets hurt. Maybe we have more passing yards and running yards. Maybe, whatever that may be, but God can see in the future that we are going to win. And maybe he just lets us figure out how we're going to get there. He tries to guide us a certain way, right? We run a play for 2-yard loss, as I mentioned. Then maybe God nudges us in a way that we throw a pass for 7-yard gain and gets us back on track. Maybe he works that way. But ultimately, do I think that he forces us to run a 2-yard or run a running play that's going to lose 2 yards? No, it's probably our decision. But he guides us back to get us in the right way. We just got to listen to him because he knows that we win 35-21, right? He knows how the game's going to end up. It's up to us to figure out the plays we're running and the free will that we have in order to work our way through the game and ultimately win. So hopefully that helps. It's kind of how I look at it. Sandra, in my heart, I don't know. I don't believe that we are preordained to where, somebody is born to fail in this life. I think everybody can be saved. I think Jesus saved us and saved everybody, but we've got to choose him. All right, we've got to run the right plays. We've got to trust him. We've got to focus on him, and we've got to choose Jesus. But if you reject him, if you make that decision, then you're not going to be saved. Doesn't mean that God put you on this earth to be damned. He put you on this earth for you to make decisions to be saved. It's complicated, makes my head hurt as well, Sandra. But in reality is what I focus on is the fact that God knows all. He's outside of time, space, and matter. He knows that we can win this game, and he's putting us in positions to win, but we've got to choose Jesus. We've got to choose the right decisions. God will correct us at times. He'll get us on the right path at times, but it is ultimately our decision whether we want to run down the field or not. So that's my long answer to a long question, Sandra. I hope that summed it up a little bit easier for you. Sorry for my terrible football analogy. It was okay, I guess, but maybe it didn't make any sense to somebody outside the United States who doesn't know American football. But that is the way I think about things sometimes, kind of weirdly analytical. In a real world sense. So anyways, one sip of coffee and let's wrap up our podcast today. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you have a book of the Bible that you want me to read or a chapter of the book, hit me up on Instagram. It's probably the best way, or email me at info@livingchristian.org, and I'm happy to pick one. I'm lining up a few extra ones in the future. We've got a few episodes we want to hit. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Once again, make sure you go to livingchristian.org. Check it out for all the blog posts and Bible verse list and apparel store and everything, and use that code podcast20 to get 20% off of everything on the store. And until next time, keep Jesus on your heart and eternity on your mind. Talk to you guys later.